WNBA changing possible end date to November 21st. And during the Olympic year, it's going to be even later than that. Under the new collective bargaining agreement, the league is changing its possible end date to November 21st, which is nearly a month later than the previous deal. According to a document produced by the union and acquired by ESPN, in 2028, the season could stretch to November 30th. Because of
the new CBA contains a detail that has not received nearly enough attention. The WNBA season now has a potential end date of November 21st, nearly a full month later than what the previous agreement allowed. In an Olympic year, that window stretches even further, with the 2028 season potentially running through November 30th. That is the latest the league has ever extended its calendar. The game count is going up as well.
2028, the season could stretch to November 30th. Because of the Olympic schedule, the document said. This is the latest the WNBA season has ever extended. Starting in 2027, the number of games played will increase to up to 50 and then 52 by 2029. Part of the expanded calendar can be attributed to expansion. Toronto and Portland are joining the league this season. By 2030, the league will be up to a record.
Beginning in 2027, teams will play up to 50 games, climbing to 52 by 2029. League expansion is part of what is driving that number. Toronto and Portland are entering this season, and the roster of franchises is projected to reach 18 teams by 2030. The earlier report date is the other significant operational shift. Starting in 2027, players must arrive at their home markets no later than April 15th or the start of training camp, whichever comes later.
Joining the league this season. By 2030, the league will be up to a record 18 teams. The players will also be required to report to their respective teams earlier. Oh, this is interesting too. So overseas play is going to have to be done and over with a little sooner than expected. Under the new CBA, beginning in 2027, players must arrive to their home markets by the later of April 15th.
Under the previous CBA, that deadline was May 1st. That is a 2-week difference that will have direct consequences for players who spend the offseason competing abroad. Which brings up the obvious collision point. Project B, the international 3-on-3 league backed by prominent investors, runs from late November through late April.
As by the later of April 15th or the start of training camp. Previously, the report date was later of May 1st or the start of camp. By the later of, I don't know. By the start of, I don't know what the deal is in that. No later than. How about that, ESPN? No later than April 15th or the start of camp. It was no later than May 1st. Come on, guys. Both the late November end date and the
WNBA's new end date pushes right up against Project B's opening window, and the new April 15th report requirement cuts directly into its closing stretch. The league's Tokyo stop is scheduled from late March into early April, right in the middle of the new mandatory return window. The WNBA did not stumble into this conflict by accident. The calendar adjustments serve as a structural barrier to players committing to competing leagues, both at the beginning and end of the season.
The late November end date and the possible earlier report date could impact players who play overseas during the offseason, including those signed to Project B. Yeah, so there's a conflict. It's going to be very close just at the beginning of the year, but definitely at the end of the year. Never mind any of the other overseas leagues out there, which is scheduled to take place from November 26th.
The financial logic behind this move is straightforward. When player salaries were sitting at $74,000 or $100,000, an owner could tolerate a star playing overseas or in another league during the offseason without much concern. The math looked different at those numbers.
November 26th until April 27th. The upcoming International 5-on-5 League has not announced the dates for its opening and closing tournaments yet, but it will make a tour stop in Tokyo from March 26th to April 4th. The latest possible end date in the last CBA was October 31st. The earliest possible start date to the basketball calendar remains unchanged at April 1. The document also sheds
Now that the salary floor and ceiling have both risen dramatically with Supermax deals reaching $1.4 million, the risk calculus changes. Owners paying seven-figure contracts do not want those players absorbing physical wear, or worse, suffering serious injuries, in a different league's uniform. The Aaliyah Boston situation in Unrivaled this past year was exactly the kind of scenario that accelerates these conversations behind closed doors.
At April 1. The document also sheds light on a variety of other issues at the crux of the CBA, which wrapped up last week when the WNBA and the Players Union verbally agreed to terms on a deal in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Get this, the document also specified through salaries and benefits the players will receive 20% of the prior year's gross revenue. That's interesting. The WNBA.
The revenue sharing piece buried in the CBA documents is also worth noting. Players will receive 20% of the prior year's gross revenue calculated before expenses are deducted. The union and the league had been divided for most of the negotiating process over whether to use gross or net figures, and the gross revenue model is what the players ultimately secured.
That's interesting. The WNBA and the WNBA were at odds for most of the negotiation over which type of revenue sharing system to adopt, the union proposing a gross revenue system, revenue before deducting expenses, and the league proposing a net revenue after deducting expenses. And it goes on to talk about salaries, and it's basically all still the same as some of the other things that have come out. There's some things related to.
The longer arc here is fairly clear. If the league continues growing and salaries take another significant jump at the next CBA negotiation, the conversation about players participating in outside leagues will move from implicit discouragement through calendar design to explicit contractual restriction. The groundwork for that is being laid now.
Tickets.com. This was a release by the Indiana Fever, bro. By the Fever about an hour ago. Watch this video. Schedule all the games. Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark working out. Getting ready.
A 5-2 game season ending in late November, combined with a mid-April mandatory return, leaves a window too narrow for meaningful participation in any serious competing league. That appears to be exactly the point. The Indiana Fever's preseason rollout video was meant to build excitement, and in one sense it succeeded, just not in the way the organization probably intended.
Getting ready. This is major, y'all. Look at Caitlin handles, though. My goodness.
The clip featured Caitlin Clark working through ball handling drills and Aaliyah Boston putting in gym time, set against upcoming schedule details and ticket information for the coming year. Clean production, solid energy. One notable gap, Kelsey Mitchell was nowhere to be found.
This is a quiet before the storm type video. But where's Kelsey Mitchell? Y'all see?
That detail hit the comments section hard and fast. Within the first hour, more than 100 responses had come in, and a significant chunk of them zeroed in on the same question. One fan summarized the general concern: while Hull and KK deserve return deals, Mitchell and Cunningham only make sense if the numbers are manageable, and the roster still needs a mobile front court presence with real size.
This is major, bro, because I believe they're telling us subliminally that Kelsey Mitchell was out of there, bro. That's what this is. I'm telling you. I'm one of the first people to say this. This video is letting us know. Be prepared. Fever season coming soon. Fever basketball. Get y'all tickets. Y'all, this video was profound. 116.
Others flagged sequences in the video where Clark appeared to be training without teammates alongside her, which only deepened the questions swirling around the current roster shape. The clip itself was genuinely well put together. Whoever is running Indiana's media department has found a rhythm, but the conversation it generated shifted almost entirely toward Mitchell's future within hours of posting.
Comments. Somebody said Lexi and KK must come back. SC and Kelsey Mitchell, if not breaking the bank, need a fast forward with length. Caitlin Clark has an aggressive dribble. Why only CC there by herself? She's not there by herself. Doc, whoever the new admin is needs a raise. I can't lie. Look, let's see if anybody going to pick up on it. Why then is her coach take 3 weeks off during the key shorten of the season? Yeah, that is weird. We talked about that yesterday.
Everything traces back to the same pressure point, the $1.4 million Supermax figure sitting on the horizon in 2027. Clark and Boston are both tracking toward that threshold, and the Fever's financial flexibility around those two obligations is going to be tight. Mitchell, meanwhile, finished 4th in MVP consideration last season, placing her firmly in the category of players whose value on the open market is at its ceiling right now, rather than still climbing.
Yeah, that is weird. We talked about that yesterday. The best admin in the world. Thank you, GOAT. Good job, Cinema. Now, Aaliyah Boston did post this today. Nice practice workout with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Meanwhile, Aaliyah is having the time of her life vacationing right now and slaying in a beautiful bikini. Stunning and so beautiful. Now, Aaliyah Boston did post that on her Instagram, but I'm telling you right now, where is Kelsey? Be prepared. Be very, very prepared.
Sitting inside Indiana's cap situation and waiting to see how the 2027 crunch plays out offers Mitchell very little upside. Her peak years and her peak earning window overlap right now. That alignment doesn't last forever, and she almost certainly understands that.
Prepared for the news, because the news is coming. I would not be surprised if Kelsey Mitchell do not sign with the Fever, because all of this boils back to that $1.4 million salary, Supermax. Now, there's no doubt about it. Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston both is going to get $1.4 million.
The expansion franchises in Portland and Toronto represent a fundamentally different kind of opportunity. Neither organization arrives with star power already locked in. Both need a credible centerpiece around which to construct a competitive identity from scratch.
$0.4 million in 2027. Who's to say that Kelsey Mitchell don't think about that right now in the back of her head? Kelsey Mitchell's stock might go down in 27. She might not be that much of an impact of a player in 27. Now is the time for her to cash in. She was 4th in the MVP voting for the 2025 calendar season. If it was
a long-term deal that places Mitchell at the top of a new roster with touches, usage, and marketing built around her is the kind of offer Indiana structurally cannot put together while committing so heavily to Clark and Boston. The Fever video showed 2 of their pillars preparing for the season ahead. The third pillar's absence from the frame may end up being one of the more telling details of the entire offseason.